Hey there, this is Jason Brenizer. I'm here with the Phenomenal Future Project, live streaming on day 21 in a row. Out of 365 days that I plan on doing this, I'm getting information out there for artists so they can take charge of their careers and leverage the power of Web3 technologies like blockchain, smart contracts, NFTs, online marketing techniques, and really start using some decentralized social media platforms for all this. So super excited to be here, even though I started recording this not too long ago, maybe 45 minutes ago, and my audio crapped out. And so I was live streaming, I don't know how long, with zero audio. So I look probably like a wondrous fool, but such is life, so I'm doing it again. Why? Because I am committed on getting this stuff out and following through on the commitments that I make to myself and the commitments that I make to you phenoms out there. So today I am wanting to go through a new framework that I'm working on for an upcoming, well, I'll say it's a beta program for a very select group of artists who have, really don't mind embracing technology. Maybe some musicians out there who have their own studio, they do their own recording. Maybe they're also doing live streaming and things like that. That's the kind of group that I'm trying to get together here that will be going through a lot of the material that I will be putting on, these live streams. But I also will have a lot of exercises there and really lots of nuts and bolts on how to create NFT series and all that kind of stuff. But today I want to cover just one little piece of that program that I'm putting together, and it is called the Fat Dragon Framework. And we'll go ahead and move right over into some slides here. So what's the deal? Fat Dragon. Okay, so the picture I have on here, the dragon isn't terribly fat, but bear with me, okay? The idea here is he's living the fat life, okay? And this is a male dragon, I'm telling you, just so that you know. Doesn't really matter what its gender is, but this one's male, okay? And what do we know about dragons? In Western mythology, not so much in Eastern mythology, but in Western mythology, dragons are solitary creatures. They are voracious. Their greed knows no bounds. So they go out, they raise a village. By that I mean, burn it to the ground. They take all of the treasure away. And I've always wondered, how do they actually take all the treasure away? You never see them flying away with it. But I digress. They take all the treasure, the gold, the riches, and they take it to the most remote possible place, their lair up in the mountains, and they just keep amassing more and more and more. And it just sits there. And the dragon, what does it do? It kind of, hibernates like a bear on top of its gold for time immemorial until it decides that it needs to go out and get more. So what's the deal here? Why is this thing so greedy? And what is the use? I mean, that's basically it's greed gone wild. Okay, so why fat? Other than the fact that he's got way more than he needs. Okay, our little intrepid knight down here would have to go trek to even get to the mountains would be difficult, and then getting into the lair and getting away with even a little bit of the items is very difficult. Okay, so we're that little knight. Okay, let's move on to slide number 2, and it really comes down, when we're talking about centralized networks versus decentralized networks, that's kind of what this fat dragon is all about. I want to describe a little bit of what the traditional players are afraid of. And by traditional players, I'm saying the traditional financial systems. So we're talking central banks like we have in the United States. That's a kind of a government entity making policy on money about interest rates and things like that, or when to print more money or not. I'm talking banks in general who have the ability to say yay or nay on giving you loans or setting up accounts and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about hedge funds. I'm talking about, the stock trading system and, things like that. Those are the traditional players. What are they afraid of? Well, they're afraid of things being free, right? They want to make money. And they're afraid that in a decentralized world, when we're looking at things like blockchains, that they get cut out of all of this, and there are no longer any fees that go to a business that is providing some sort of value. The second thing here, anarchy. They're worried that there is going to be no order. Okay, if everybody can do whatever the hell they want, whenever they want to do it, what happens when people are trying to money launder using a blockchain? How can we protect against that? And also, they're afraid of things being trustless. In other words, that there is no authoritative oversight because, again, they're afraid that people are going to do things that just don't make sense, and it will really mess up how the whole economic system works. So it's kind of funny. In the United States, we like to say that we're a capitalist society. Well, we'll actually like to say we're a democratic society, but that's not even really true. But I would say we're closer to capitalism. However, there is definitely a school of thought for capitalism that the markets will dictate what needs to be done as opposed to central authority. And yet we have this constant push-pull balance that is hard to strike here in the United States. So I don't even know if we have true capitalism or not. No, they definitely want to be able to control, especially how the United States is doing compared to other countries. So it does come down a little bit to nationalism as well. Do I say that our system is terrible? No, it's actually one of the better systems out there, I think, but it can be made better. We'll say this a lot. Things are never perfect. They can always be made better. And the world, as the world changes, we do have to make changes. We can't just stick with the system that was set up in 1776. So, I'm all for what's going on in the blockchain world. I'm sure, as you figured out if you watched a few of my videos, but I also am not a burn it to the ground kind of guy and start over. All right, let's move on here. So for the decentralized blockchains, I want to dispel a few myths. The free is not true, okay? There are transactions, and there are transaction fees, and there are also fees that go to the miners. The nodes on the network that choose to validate that blocks being written to the blockchain are accurate, they make money, they make crypto, okay? They get some value for the value that they provide, whether that's validation or also doing the hard problems that end up earning them the mining fees around proof of work or proof of stake. The anarchy problem, it's not really there either, because the blockchain is actually the opposite of opaque. It's open. Everyone can read everything that's on the blockchain, okay? Does that cause anarchy? No, I think it's actually a little bit more fair. What do you say? And then it's also immutable. That means that the data on the blockchain, once it's written there, is going to be the same forever by the way that the chain itself is designed and the nodes interact. So no anarchy to worry about. Now, when it comes to trustless, that statement that they might be afraid of is actually true, but I don't think they really should be afraid of that. Why? Because there are fewer middlemen, or possibly no middlemen, and yes, that's something they're afraid of because they don't have the control necessarily. Look, if I wanted to wire money from my account to someone else's account, I have to pretty much go down to the bank, and they can actually say no, believe it or not. Or they can have a certain maximum that a wire can be. Or if I wanted to do it on a weekend and the bank is closed, sorry, and of course they take as long as they want to take. So in a trustless world, the other aspect of this on the blockchain is that I don't I don't have to trust that someone, a middleman, actually made something happen. Okay. Good example would be, let's say I'm an artist and I have a CPA who, or a bookkeeper. A bookkeeper would be a good example. Someone who's, my money's coming in and they're keeping track of all of the expenses and all of the income and all that type of stuff. It's quite possible a bookkeeper could cook the books. This one single individual that's in between me and my accounts could siphon money off and I would never know it. Okay. In the blockchain, there are a lot of checks and balances that make that much more difficult, because essentially, when I'm trying to sell, a good example would, if I want to sell an NFT to a possible buyer, that is going to be governed by a smart contract. It's like having a bookkeeper that does things exactly the same way all the time and never sleeps by how that was programmed. So just by the nature of how the blockchain is designed, if those smart contracts are written well at the beginning, we don't need to trust if the right amount of money gets into my account from a blockchain sale, because even the apps, the applications, or decentralized applications, dApps, that sit on top and work on the network or blockchain, even those have to run the code that is actually in the smart contract. So again, very difficult to lie. Very difficult to lie. You're taking that trust out of there. Trustless is a good thing in this case. All right. So now I wanted to look at the real world right now and compare some centralized entities versus some decentralized entities. So over here on the left-hand side, we've got banks. I already talked a little bit about banks. We've got a little Fort Knox over here. We're going to actually cover that in a little bit as well. Bear with me. There are trade secrets that companies can have. So Coca-Cola, they have the recipe for their classic Coke. That has been a trade secret forever. I don't think it's ever gotten out, which is pretty amazing that that's actually true. So maybe in this case, that's a good thing, right? It gives them a competitive edge, and we wouldn't want everybody's cola to taste exactly like Coke. We like variety, okay? So I'm not saying that centralization is necessarily a bad thing. It's just sometimes it can get out of hand. Case in point. So with the CIA, now, of course, they're called the Central Intelligence Agency, so it's right there in the name. They are the purveyors of very secret information, and they do that purportedly to protect us, the United States, I should say. If you're not in the United States, maybe you're not part of us. Sorry about that. They protect the United States from foreign threats. Now, I guess that's a good thing. A lot of countries have the equivalent of the CIA. They want to keep their borders safe and be on top of what other bad actors might be doing. The problem here, though, is that sometimes something becomes so centralized that they create a very small circle of people that are able to look at the information. And when that happens, information can be skewed and no one has the ability to check and see. Checks and balances. In this case, the U.S. Congress is supposed to have oversight over the CIA and what they're up to, but they also have, the CIA has over time really gained a lot of power when it comes to keeping secrets. And case in point, 2001, we had the Twin Towers got hit by airplanes, and lots of people died, and the United States lashed out. And the CIA came up with some reports that there were weapons of mass destruction and also some ties to Al-Qaeda in Iraq with Saddam Hussein, and we go in and invade a country and start a war. And then it came out later that all of that data was not quite accurate. And that is the problem sometimes with centralization. So balance is rather important to be able to really check and see if the people who believe one thing very dogmatically want to go do something. Do we as citizens have the ability to check and see if that's true or not? So I throw that out there as a good example of how centralization can get out of control. Now, Facebook is a centralized example of a social media company. And one of the things that they have that you don't actually own is all of your followers. People who follow your page or that are your friends, the people that are in groups that you're in. If you decide to leave Facebook, or Facebook decides to cut your account off and kick you off the platform, you don't get to take your lists of people with you. So as an artist or a musician, if you have a page and a whole bunch of people are following you, well, sorry, you don't really own that audience. You don't get to interact with them in whatever means that you want. That's Facebook's choice. And in fact, even when you post things on your Facebook account or your Facebook page, how many of those friends and followers actually get to see the content you're posting? You have no control over that. They have no control over that. It's Facebook choosing to serve up information on however their algorithms see fit to what? Why do they do that? They do that because they want to make money and they want to get content in front of you that keeps you on, number one, and that has you seeing ads and all of that type of stuff. So they're incentivized to they have I'm not going to say this in a nice way, but Facebook only cares what Facebook wants. Okay, you're creating all of this content and they're choosing to serve it up in a way that makes them the most money. It's as simple as that. Okay, so back to this. Now at the bottom we've got Penguin. We've got a little Penguin. This is Penguin Random House publishers, book publishers. There are 6 traditional book publishers out there in the United States, and they are all in lockstep on how much they will give authors to as an advance or the percentages that they get from book sales. It's extremely low, by the way. It's about 12.5% from all of them. So if a book sells for $10, what does that mean? You're going to get $1.25. Probably did the math, $1.25, and they get to keep the rest. Does that seem fair for the person who wrote this really hard book? And are they really marketing you, or are they just setting you in a bookstore and not really doing much for you? It's usually the latter. So that's an example of where there's a lot of power in central hands. These are the gatekeepers for book publishers. Now, luckily, Amazon has kind of ballooned that and allowed people to not necessarily have to go get an agent, then find a book publisher, and then get turned down a million times before you actually get a book accepted. Amazon lets you publish independently, both Kindle books, or ebooks, and print books. And you get higher percentages. If you sell a book, I think between $3 and $9 or something in the Kindle store, you get to keep 70% of that sale. So that's a lot better, right, than 12.5%. But again, you don't own the list of people who buy your books, so you can't tell them later that you have another book coming. Amazon owns that list, you don't. And also Amazon can change their rules anytime they want as a central authority, and they do. And now most books that are on Kindle are, Amazon wants them to be in what they call Kindle Unlimited. You don't actually get paid for a book sale. You get paid a portion of all books that get freely streamed to people with the Kindle Unlimited accounts or Prime accounts, I think. And you get kind of the equivalent of streaming pennies on the dollar, like you would if you're a musician and you have some music streaming on Spotify. It's the number of pages that people end up reading you get paid for, and not the full book, right? Just like I think if on Spotify you stream and someone listens to 30 seconds of your song versus the 4 minutes that your song is, you obviously will make less for that little bit that they've streamed. They're keeping track of that. So I say all of this because, you know, I am speaking to authors and musicians and artists here, and, you know, so many of the ways that these artists had made money, even though it was difficult in the past, now don't even have what they used to have. And so what was onerous rights grab from the publishers, whether it's music or not, or the gallery owners when we're talking about artists, a lot of that has gotten even worse in our modern era. So blockchain is trying to do a lot to help alleviate that and put the power of making money back into the artist's hand. So that's fantastic. I'm happy that's happening. On the right-hand side, you know, there are some decentralized networks that exist and have existed for a long time. I would argue that our patent system in the United States is decentralized, incentivized information dissemination. Okay, so let's say a scientist comes up with something new and novel and wants to start a company and go sell a brand new product that doesn't exist. If we didn't have the patent office, they would be like Coca-Cola, and they would try to hide that information and not let anybody know what it is that they're doing. The patent system, though, is really cool in that it says, hey, if you divulge all of the work that you've done, all of the data, all the results, and show schematics of the thing that you're building, and get that patented, it's going to be published for all other scientists, entrepreneurs, businesses, researchers, etc., to be able to read up on that, learn from it, but not actually be able to go make products themselves from it for 17 years. So you get the full licensing to be able to go make money on all that hard work and time and money that you spent on creating this new amazing work for 17 years. But it also helps push the forefront of science and engineering forward a lot faster. And this has really helped the United States you know, be a world leader when it comes to new technologies. And so I would say that and that's been around for a very, very long time, since early 1800s in the United States. So pretty smart move. And like I said, it's decentralized information. The idea is to get all of that out there for as many people as possible to push forward their knowledge. Now, the second thing I have on here is the blockchain, a blockchain network, or ledger. We've got peer-to-peer sharing, which has been around since the early 2000s in computers. A good example would have been Napster, in a not so nice way. LimeWire, I think, was another one early on. Now, we've got the equivalent, or the analog to Facebook. We have decentralized social media platforms starting. This one's called Minds, and it's kind of a YouTube, Facebook hybrid, and artists actually get paid directly for the work that they're doing, which is fantastic. You can also be putting your content up there for free, and so you can have some behind a paywall and some not. You choose. That's a pretty cool system. And then Linux is a good example of open source software that's been around a long time. People can you know, program new objects, programming objects and functions and things like that, and publish them to the open source forums, and then everybody can reap the benefits of that hard work that people are doing. And that has definitely pushed a lot of software forward in the last 10 years. And then the last thing here, our library system in the United States is also, in a way, a decentralized means of getting information and entertainment out there. So you can go to a library and check out any of the books for free. It just so happens that in the library system, each municipality could say what they choose to have on their shelves and what they choose to ban. So it's kind of interesting in that it's not a you know, society-wide decentralization, but it's very hyper-local in that sense. The internet has just exploded that, of course, and now so much more information is available to everybody around the world, which is fantastic. I think I still have audio, so I'm really happy about that. So we'll continue with the Fat Dragon framework, and this is kind of a sub-framework, the Fort Knox hoarding fallacy. So, where we once had a dragon and its treasure, the United States is actually, basically hoarded a treasure at Fort Knox. It's a place where all of the gold reserves in the United States have been stored for a very long time. And if here I am, the modern day knight, wanted to go try to get a whole bunch of gold, I'd have to go through a ridiculous amount of protection here at the fort, and through multiple layers below ground, and probably so many different types of locks and keys to be able to get to that final vault at the end. Okay, but just like the dragon at the beginning, the United States is hoarding gold, and at this point it has no use in the fort. So back in 1971-72, the president, for the most part, but we'll just say the government, made a choice. We were having crazy inflation, and to be able to have a bit more leeway in the choices that they were making on monetary policy, they chose to take the United States off the gold standard. What that said was they would have $1 worth of gold for every printed dollar that was out there. And so yeah, in the early 70s, that connection was removed, and that means all of the gold that's sitting in Fort Knox really has no use anymore, other than kind of a status symbol of the fact that the United States has a lot of bars of gold sitting around. There's usefulness for gold besides it being a store for value. When it comes to an equivalence to money, there are definitely scientific uses for that. So it just sitting in a vault somewhere is a waste when it could be used for electronics and a lot of other scientific uses. Now, there is one thing that I want to say too about money in general and having it just sitting in a bank account. A couple things. The first being that $100 in your bank account a year ago is now worth $91.5 in buying power today. In essence, right, we have 9.5% inflation in the United States as I record this, and so you're losing money essentially by inflation of having it sit in a vault and not being used for something. Okay, and then also you're not buying goods, you're not spending money on services with that money, and so other people are not making a living off of your money just sitting in a bank. So there is this concept of velocity of money actually helps an economy be much stronger, and so that's why I just have the little speedometer down here at the bottom, and it's like the speed basically halts and goes to zero, that you have very little use. That money is not, it's no longer actually doing anything worthwhile in the economy. Again, that's that dragon hoarding, So what should a person do if they have a whole bunch of funds? Well, start a business, go employ people, give to a charity. There are a lot of different things. Like, there are a lot of problems in the world that need to be solved. And so, I look at someone like Elon Musk and I go, is he an example of a hoarder? I don't think so. The guy sold his houses and, what does he do with his own money? He starts new companies, okay? So when he sold PayPal, he could have just retired and just been a rich guy, okay? He could have then taken a whole bunch of that money and just put it in other investments and made interest, and then his money would continue to grow, and it would be a self-perpetuating machine in that way if he invested wisely. But no, he takes most of his money, almost all of it, from the PayPal payout, and he starts up, initially it was Tesla, and then he starts up SpaceX, and then he starts up a solar company, and the Boring Company, and another company where he's trying to make connections, between a computer and the brain interface. Like, he is trying to push the technology forward by leaps and bounds when governments are not choosing to do this, and when other people are not really choosing to do this. They're hoarding their wealth. So I would look at someone like Elon Musk. He's the richest man on the planet right now, and say, no, he deserves the money that he has, because he puts his money back to work, not just making money, but trying to save the environment, and trying to make us an interplanetary species, and the list is rather long. And is he a crazy individual in some ways? Sure. But is he entertaining? Yeah. I gotta love that too. But like I said, I feel like the dude is creating a lot of value. So for me, he's not necessarily a dragon hoarding his wealth. But I digress. It's kind of digressing. Anyway, it ties into the velocity that I was talking about. He has his money out there doing things, which helps, perpetuate the economy, because so many people work for the companies that he creates. He creates a lot of value. Now, there is one other thing in here too, and I want to use an example. I put a whole bunch of people inside this vault. So it's not just money in the sense that a dragon can hoard, but it's people. So if we're this intrepid knight here, modern day knight, we're the artists, and we want something that's valuable, to us, it's the audience, it's the fans, it's the collectors of the things that we create. There are dragons or gatekeepers that can block us from getting access to those people. So a good example would be a gallery, not necessarily a gallery owner, but somebody who's going to help an artist get a show, and get their work out there. So let's say 3 years ago, you had a show, and you go back to the same person, and this person says, oh yeah, the old gallery, that space, it's no longer the chic place. It's kind of run down. We need to be on the other side of town. You don't need to worry about this kind of stuff. I'm gonna take care of you. And they go ahead and find the gallery space. They get the word out to all of their collectors, the list of people that they have, and you don't have to do any of the marketing or the sales. So when the show is happening, you're just talking about your art, but when the deals are made, it's that person who set up the show who's talking to the people who are buying or collecting your work. Now, in this case, you don't have access to the people necessarily. I mean, maybe at the show itself you kind of do, but not if you're not in the middle of the deals, not if you're in the room when those decisions are being made for how much those paintings or whatever they are being sold for. Okay, so let's say your gallery owner works out a deal. They sell one of your pieces for $125,000, but you don't know that. And they said, oh, it was $50,000 and my cut was 50%, so you've got $25,000 in the bank. How do you know? How do you know? If you can't go and call that guy, if you don't know after the show, if you don't know how to get a hold of who it was, Bob Smith. Do you know how to get a hold of Bob Smith? Do you know where Bob Smith lives? Can you talk to him? If that person holds the keys to the gate to those fans and collectors, you are giving up a lot of your power. Now they may have provided a fair amount of value for doing all of that work, but you have to be making choices intently here. The difference with that and that sense of trust that you have to have with that individual, or taking the time and effort to be by their side the whole time when all of those transactions are happening, would be in a blockchain world. The smart contract would be the intermediary. Okay, and once written at the beginning, once there's work done at the beginning and that contract is written for how the NFTs are going to work or how your art is going to be traded and sold. And this works for art that's digital or art that's physical that has a digital NFT tied to it. Once it's written and you trust it, you can trust it from now into eternity, because anytime someone buys or sells that art in the future, you don't actually have to be in the middle of that transaction, because you can trust that the contract itself, the code, is going to do what it needs to do so that you get your cut of that sale and it shows up in your account, which is pretty cool. So that's the difference here between decentralized and centralized when we're talking, kind of this, dealing with gatekeepers. Now, the last thing I want to cover here is 3 questions when we're looking at centralized versus decentralized networks or systems. Number 1, can I see the data? Am I allowed to see it? Number 2, is what they gave me, the data they gave me, or the thing that I asked for, actually true and accurate, or did they make it up? Did they fake it? And number 3, can I buy a token, an object, an item at any time that I want to? So let's go over here and look at a centralized system first. Number 1, it's like a castle. They've got a moat around their information, and there is only one copy. For all intents and purposes, right? It is their copy, the data, behind lock and key. So any user that wants to actually get access to the information that these companies hold, like Facebook, hey, can I have the email addresses of all the people who follow my Phenomenal Future page on Facebook? Well, can I see the data? Facebook says, no, too bad. Sorry, that's our data. Number 2, is what they give me true and accurate? Well, what if they gave me a giant list of people? Let's say it was 100. I go, wait, I think I have more followers than that. Don't I have 250? Well, maybe only 100 actually had email addresses associated with their account. Do I know that? No, I don't know that, okay? There's just no way to know. Or they could just send me a whole bunch of random people. I don't know, okay? That's just the Facebook example, right? But if we're talking, hard data, can I see all of the data? I don't know if I'm getting it or not. Okay. And then number 3, can I buy a token, an object, an item anytime I want? Let's not use the Facebook example, but let's just say I want to buy cryptocurrencies. I've posted on this before. My bank says no. Sorry, we don't allow you to set up. I mean, the 4 banks told me no. We don't set up accounts that allow you to do trading. Sorry, you can't have a bank account. So essentially, I'm not the right kind of person. I'm not a billionaire. Okay, I'm not someone who has a team of lawyers that can go and kind of convince a bank to do that kind of thing. And so they have their rules, and sorry, no. You can't do this. And so I'm kind of left in a lurch on that. Now, that's an example. We won't go into the details on that, but let's compare that to a decentralized network. Okay, so here we have many computers on the network. Some of them have copies of the blockchain. Okay, they have a copy of the ledger, and they are doing work to verify that information being written to the ledger is accurate. And enough of them have to agree. So let's go to these questions again. Can I see the data? The answer is yes. Whenever I want, immediately, I can go and scan the information on the blockchain and look at it. I can even look at how the code that is written in smart contracts. Okay, the contracts, the terms are not hidden. They're there for someone who can read code. Okay, but they're there, which is really cool. Number 2, is what they gave me true and accurate? So first off, a majority of the nodes must agree, they must have consensus that their copies match. So every time a new block is being written to the chain, they all have to look at the entire chain to make sure everything is accurate. And if 51% of those nodes don't match, no, let me back up. Let's say copy 1. Let's say this guy who owns this computer, he's trying to fake it out. And he goes and he writes some information on an old block that said he got $500,000 worth of Bitcoin, way back in the past, and it should be in his wallet. So his one copy now is different than everybody else's copy. So they all look at what he threw out there on the network, and they go, no, that doesn't match what I have. No, that doesn't match what I have. And so they basically throw his data out and go, that's false, it's an error. They don't necessarily say he's a bad actor, but it's an error, that's not true, and it doesn't get written to their copies of the blockchain. So that's pretty cool. That's what consensus is. Now, on the flip side of that, if someone were to want to try to game the system, they would have to have 51% of the computer power out there, 51% of the computers out there with all of, like, let's say there are 1,000 computers on a certain blockchain. They would have to have 510 computers out of the 1,000 all agreeing to the fake information they're putting on the blockchain, such that that becomes the new copy that everyone else would then have. So they call that a 51% attack, and it's rare. The larger a blockchain becomes, the more and more impossible that becomes, because it's just too many computers on the network. If you were setting up a server farm in Azerbaijan, and all of a sudden you flip the switch onto 10,000 new computers on a certain blockchain, that also raises a red flag, like, wait, why did all of these come online at the same time? It's one bad actor with a whole bunch of computers trying to game the system, and that too should be caught as well. And then the last question, can I buy that token or object or cryptocurrency or item whenever and I want and whoever I am? And of course the answer is yes. You just pay what the seller is asking for that item, whoever you are and wherever you are and whenever it is. And you also pay a small fee for the verification work done by the nodes, because the nodes are out there for a reason. They're a business, right? They have costs and expenses, electricity and computer upkeep and all that kind of stuff, people. And so they get paid from the fees that get generated from all of the verification and the hard problems that get solved for the mining fees, which would be proof of work or proof of stake. And then, of course, platforms are making a little bit of a transaction fee as well, if they are kind of an intermediary. But it's small, which is good. It's not like a giant amount of money that they would be taking. So that's what I've got here, for the Dragon framework. It's really, how do we look at centralized versus decentralized networks, and why is blockchain so powerful? And what are those, traditional players afraid of, and should they be? And my answer is no. They should not be afraid that things are now just going to be free, and that's going to be an anarchist world, and that, trustless is a bad thing. So that is what I've got for you today. I will be working on this framework a bit more as I go through it. It's funny, when you teach something, you realize that you've missed some things, or that you may have used some analogies that aren't as clear as you would like. But I'm really excited to have this opportunity. The world is amazing that we can live stream video like this. It only used to be in television studios, and the quality sucked, early on. I mean, I remember what 80s television was like. I am that age. So to know that I can do this from my home and essentially have my own television studio and be able to get this information out to people who are very interested in it, it's just so cool. It's really cool to be alive right now. I'm excited to be able to get more information out for you. I'm excited to help artists really take control of their careers and have a phenomenal future. And I gotta say, whoever's watching, I love you. You're phenoms, and let's build this amazing future together. All right.